Revelation 1383. From the 15th and 16th of April 1940. Concept of the supernatural. The unconscious state of prejudice against everything supersensible is often the cause of a blind journey through the earthly life, because understandably always only a certain knowledge can illuminate the way, but this knowledge again can only be gained through research. But everything lying outside the earth again can only be researched with recourse to the so-called supersensible forces, therefore these must not be switched off, but the working of such forces must be recognized. The connection with them must be consciously striven for in order to become clairvoyant for life on earth. And this requires a certain devotion, but at the same time it also requires the will of man to connect with the spiritual. For that striving has nothing in common with earthly desire for possessions. Whoever seeks to fathom supersensible things will not expect or aim at any earthly advantage, but will only think of his soul. Furthermore, he will abandon himself to those powers and thereby acknowledge that they are knowing, and thus want to accept any teaching from them. He will feel the superiority of these forces and subordinate himself to them. And now the otherworldly forces can also exert their whole influence on such a willing earthly child. A person who surrenders to these forces must therefore have a great advantage in spiritual matters, for he is basically at the source of all knowledge, and even if many things still seem inexplicable to him, he still accepts everything supersensible and has the deepest understanding for spiritual truths. All too often wrong and right concepts of the supersensible are mixed, and that is the cause that one can only find the right understanding where one has the will to let what is right be valid. The will for truth is present and man's spirit is also accordingly active, and if this spirit now points out to him that which exists outside of the earthbound, then man also recognizes such indications as truth and now understands much sooner also the working of spiritual forces in the beyond, and it now appears to him no longer supernatural, but natural. Only now the supersensible is an explanation for everything that was incomprehensible until then, and he feels that only now he stands in the truth, because he surrenders himself to those forces. Only now everything seems to make sense to him, and the state of prejudice against the supersensible gives way to the state of the fullest affirmation of it. He has now crossed a boundary which he did not believe himself entitled to cross, on which he simply did not want to admit as existing. He has therefore crossed over into another realm, which his thinking faculty did not want to accept before. He now roams through this realm in all directions, he comes across new areas again and again, which are foreign to him and whose exploration excites him and makes him glad about life on earth. For only now the meaning of life on earth is comprehensible to him, only now he knows about his task, and all this gives him increased joy of life, while now the supersensible is no longer separated from what his senses grasp, but the spiritual connection with life outside of the earth. The acknowledgement thereof lets the human being sink consciously into the most manifold problems, while before, all these problems remained unresolved or were dismissed as unsolvable, if they really appear in the heart of the human being, but mostly do not touch the human being at all, because he does not waste his thoughts on what seems unimportant to him. And he who is prejudiced against what is not tangible or apparent to him, will therefore remain completely unimpressed and ignorant. He blocks himself the way to any knowledge, because the latter is not to be found without spiritual power. Spiritual power, however, is something invisible and intangible to man. Spiritual power is independent of the earth and its laws. Spiritual power cannot be felt with human senses, but can be received with the heart at any time. It is therefore never to be fathomed sensorially. It is supersensible. It belongs to that kingdom which is infinite, which is more than the earth. It is the spiritual power, the stream of life which flows through everything that is, which goes out from God and is supplied to everything what is God's creation. And the earth is only a particle of the total creation. It must therefore be understandable to man that this earth cannot be the purpose and goal at the same time, that rather the goal of the beings inhabiting the earth must be another world. A world which their senses cannot grasp yet, which is therefore supersensible. Amen.